there are really 4 or 5 independent sources of evidence. If you'd like, I can describe some of the others. In fact, I'll do so. It
Please,
seems
yes, it's
just in case some of your viewers are in need of this sort of
and I'll
persuasion.
come back to a few of these. I have a few follow-up questions, but it would be great for the viewers to get a sense of the different lines of evidence.
All right, I'll try to lay them out and be somewhat more abbreviated than it was in this first case. With regard to sexual dimorphism, there's another, well, it's not related to it, similar to it is the phenomenon of sexual bimaturism, which has to do with different ages at which the two sexes become mature. Now, given that female mammals particularly, experience much greater stress when it comes to reproduction, they have to bear the offspring and then nurse them afterward, which uses even more metabolic energy than does the pregnancy. One would expect that females should delay their reproduction until they're larger and hence better able to absorb the stresses. And that males, given that all that they have to do is provide a very small amount of sperm, which is a trivial metabolic investment, that males should become sexually mature much earlier. But in fact, it's exactly the other way around. In human beings, if you look at what in early teenagers, the girls tower over the boys, the girls become sexually mature earlier than the boys. Why is that? And incidentally, we find that exact same pattern among other polygynous animals. And the reason almost certainly is that if you're a male in a polygynous species, where again you have competition among the males, even though the metabolic requirement for reproducing is very small, the behavioral requirement is very large. So you have to compete with other males. As a result of which, in every polygynous species, males become sexually mature later, females earlier, even though they have to invest more metabolically. And moreover, if you look at this pattern of sexual bimaturism, you find that it varies directly with the degree of polygyny. So if you look at species like elephant seals, for instance, in which a male is a successful male, if you will, may have a harem of several dozen females, there's a significant difference in ages of sexual maturity. As you go to other species, various members of the deer family, for instance, in which there are harems, but they're not nearly as large, as unbalanced, if you will, as elephant seals, the degree of sexual bimaturism is somewhat less. When you look at those very few species that are monogamous, there's essentially no sexual bimaturism. So again, the sexual bimaturism in humans correlates very much. The anthropological evidence prior to the homogenization of human societies that to some extent developed along with colonialism, anthropological evidence is greater than 85% of human societies prior to encountering the West, basically, were preferentially polygynous. That doesn't mean that all of them were, or that certainly not all men were within those societies, because many were reproductively excluded altogether by virtue of the polygyny of those who were successful. But again, the data, the anthropologic data is very clear. And I'll mention one last one, and it's not the final one, but yet another, and then I'll stop. If we look at the Y chromosomes, which of course are provided by males and normally found only in males and male offspring, historically, if you go back and look at the genomic data, which are by now really quite complete, we find that there is significantly less diversity among Y chromosomes than among X chromosomes. And in making that rather long genomic story short, what that means is a relatively small number of men have contributed disproportionately to our current population, whereas a relatively larger number of women have. And again, that's because of our polygynous nature, with a small number of men mating with a larger number of women. And so the bottom line here is, if you were a Martian zoologist came to visit Earth, they would conclude without a doubt that human beings are biologically predisposed to polygyny, not to monogamy.